if you don't. Make sure that you get a copy so that you can see what we're about. I'm just going to run us through the program real quick. We are going to start with a welcome from Professor Olofsson from University of Fort Hare. She will be welcoming us this evening. Followed by that, I will do a short introduction to introduce our guest speaker, the main event, Miss Nonkululeko Gobodo, who will then come on stage and just set the scene for us. Then we have a special treat today. We will have Missy Ngidi. Is she in the house? She's ready for us. Okay, she's ready. Who will be delivering a poem, and trust me, I've heard some good things, so I'm really looking forward to that part of the program. After that, we will then go onto the stage, myself and Ms. Gobodo, where we'll just engage on some of the issues from the book, just taking us through what some of the main points are. And then we'll be joined on stage by Dr. Rungani from University of Fort Hare, and she will then be elaborating and adding to our conversation on just some of the key points raised in the book. But we will also be giving away 3 prizes to students specifically. The non-students in the room, I'm sorry, but you can buy a copy of the book at the back. And Ms. Gobodo will be signing in for you as well. So we'll have a lucky draw for the students where you guys will be able to win. There goes my platform, where you'll be able to get a book. So I do encourage you, if you win the book, get it signed, and there will be photo opportunities at the end, and we'll also have some questions. At the back, we've got our digital specialists, and this is being live streamed. So if you have an opportunity to share on your Facebook, tell people to go check out Daily Dispatch as well as Fort Hare, who will be live streaming this event this evening. And Prof, we welcome you to the stage.
Thank you. My name is Professor Cheri-Ann Olofsson, and I am from the University of Fort Hare's Gender-Based Violence Prevention Unit. The Gender-Based Violence Prevention Unit is co-hosting this event, and we are very excited to have you all here. I would like to welcome all HODs who managed to make it here today, unit heads. I would like to welcome our guest of honor, Ms. Nonkululeko Gobodo, and then also our discussant, Dr. Ellen Rungani, and to everyone else present here today, staff and students of the University of Fort Hare especially. It is my great honor to welcome you all here today at this prestigious event. And we are, it's fine. We are delighted to be in the presence of an icon here today. We really are, we really are honored in terms of her life and her journey as she set it out in the book, and the inspiration that can be drawn from that, especially for young black women. And building up young black women is partly what our unit is all about. So we really appreciate you being here today and sharing with us. And I'm sure that the people online will also benefit. So, a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. I'm going to be short and sweet. Today will be an inspiring event, and I do hope that you are looking forward to it as much as I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Olofsson. Okay, my introduction will also be short and sweet because this evening we are all here to listen to one person, really. Miss Gobodo is ready to share her knowledge and her amazing story with us this evening. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Eastern Cape launch of the autobiography, Awaken to My True Self. Nonkululeko Gobodo needs no introduction, but for the sake of formalities, allow me to introduce her to you this afternoon. She's a mother, grandmother, a sister, businesswoman, and now author. The name Nonkululeko Gobodo is etched in South African history as the country's first black female charter. A shy young woman in 1987 to being thrust into the spotlight following this achievement. In the years that followed, she challenged the status quo and blazed a trail not only for herself, but for the many women who were to follow in her footsteps. Mam Nonkululeko has won numerous accolades and awards over the years, including the Woman of Substance Award, Businesswoman of the Year at the Standard Bank Top Women Awards, Outstanding Women in Business Awards at the BBQ, and the Pioneering Entrepreneur Award, among many, many others. Today, she will give us a glimpse into her life and all the challenges she has had to overcome on her way to the top. So please join me as we welcome Mam Nonkululeko Gobodo to the stage.
Molweni bethuna. Kaloku ndisekhaya ndingathi molweni. In Joburg I have to say sakubona. Here I don't have to say sakubona. I just want to thank my family who's here to support me. Thank you so much. Others I didn't expect, but they are here. Thank you. Yesterday we were in Amtata at the Walter Sisulu University. Hey, we had a great evening that I didn't expect. The level of dialogue was so high. And now Fort Hare has to follow suit as well. And I say this because I've done these talks around the book in Johannesburg. Hey, that level was high. And I think it's because people from the Eastern Cape are facing real challenges. You know, Joburg were high flyers. But in the Eastern Cape, people are facing real challenges. And so even the questions that came from the students, there were students from a high school there, the questions that came from those high school students, I was shocked. And that said to me, we've got depth in the Eastern Cape that we should never take for granted. And how do we then harness this depth that I saw yesterday and I expect to see today? As we were driving back this morning, I had not been on that road for a long time. And my brother actually brought us to East London. We were just commenting, hey, there used to be rondavels here. There are no more rondavels. It's beautiful homes, properly built, the kinds of houses that you see in suburbs, in cities. And that said to me that there's a generation that has been educated. And now they are going back home to give back. So there's development. Wow. So this thing of education is serious in terms of the transformation of our country. And then I was walking around campuses today and yesterday. No, I've not been in a campus in a long time. And I'm looking at these droves of students, and many female, as they are walking about doing their business, maybe going to class or leaving or whatever. And it hit me, the weight of responsibility upon these institutions to develop these future leaders for our country. The ones that I saw the impact of as I was driving here. Because the only way we're going to transform the country is education. And then I thought, okay, what kind of leaders are we developing as these institutions? When you look at the state of our country, we've been going downhill now for many years. And yeah, you worry where it is all going to end. There's unemployment. Our graduates are sitting at home, not working. How do we then prepare these leaders to face these challenges? Because we can't have a situation of investing in our future leaders and then they're sitting at home. And when you sit at home for 3-5 years, imagine psychologically what happens to that person. What is going to be the impact of that? How do we then bring them back? Because they're depressed. They thought that their education was going to put them in a certain place, but now it's doing the opposite. It's a huge responsibility, because we need to prepare them for this world they are going into. This one I'm talking about. So these are black universities where I went, so these students that I saw were black, and I have these questions that I've been asking myself. When you look at the situation of black people in South Africa, when you look at the situation of women in South Africa, and the state that our nation is in, it says to me, as I've been saying, something has to give. Something has to give. Usingalo, we've debated these issues with my friend. We need something new to transform our country. We need something new to change the state of black people and women and to change the state of our nation. And then I asked myself, then we had hoped that politics will help the transformation of our country. But when you look not just in South Africa, when you look in Africa, politics have disappointed us. We've lost faith in politicians and politics. Should we then be helpless and hopeless? Should we have these young people who are helpless and hopeless? That's why I'm saying something has to give. So, what should happen then? And I think to myself, if you look at these two groups, black people and women, especially, they have grown up into this society that has labeled them, inventing myths about them, saying they are inferior, they are weak, they are incapable, and so on. We know the myths. So people who have been conditioned to think like that about themselves. That's why when I was looking at these students as they were going up, I wish I could read their minds. Whether they have hope. And now, because I had a lecture, I addressed accounting 3 students this afternoon here. At least I could talk to them, and I could see how worried they are about our country. So these people who have been socialized to believe that they are inferior, they are all of these things. We need them to bring this something new. How then will the people who have been socialized like this bring this something new? What do we want? As black people who said we wanted freedom, but freedom didn't deliver what we had expected. Women have said they want a seat at the table, they want to share, have a piece of the pie. Has that delivered freedom? When I look at the state of women in corporate South Africa and everywhere else, are women really free? Yes, they have a seat. Yes, they share in the pie, but they're not free. It's very costly for them to sit there because they often have to abandon themselves. Because there's this stereotype of woman and black person. You have to fit this stereotype. And if you don't fit the stereotype, then we know what happens to you. You don't get the job, you don't get the promotion, and so on, because there's this expectation. And then I'm saying, just imagine if you have to function within this box that has been created for you. And because as human beings, we're always looking for safety and security. We are always willing to abandon ourselves for the safety and security. So if I don't comply with the box, then, I lose out on the slice of the pie. I'm not invited to sit at the table. Are we free then? What does freedom look like? We have to ask these questions for ourselves, because for political freedom, we didn't ask. We assumed that political freedom was going to bring this freedom of being welcome into institutions as we are. We expected that there will be economic transformation for the majority of our people. But of course, that didn't happen. So we need to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, what do we want? What does freedom look like? And then I ask myself then that how do we then create this something new? Because we've been socialized to have these limiting beliefs about ourselves. And I know from experience that when you believe what the teacher says, the lecturer says, the parent says, as well-meaning as they are, you tend to believe these things. And those beliefs begin to shape who you are and how you function in society. But I have hope, because I've had a life of ups and downs where I would literally lose myself and not know who I am. And then it would happen that I would wake up again, awaken to myself again, and find myself again. And you'll ask, okay, how do you find yourself? So when I got tired of suffering, suddenly you see things clearly, and you are able to overcome. And what always amazed me, because this didn't happen once for me, what amazed me was the minute I found myself again, my life changed like that. Like that. Didn't know who I am. 1 minute I have clarity. I'm building something even bigger than the one I thought I lost. And that says to me then that those times when I thought I was lost, the real me was there. All there. With the gifts, with everything. Because I would get into gear, and with the Nonkululeko I know, and start to build big things that many people are afraid of. So, it is crucial that these two groups find who they truly are, outside the myths that have been created about them. It would be like, you know, when it's cloudy, maybe, you know, by 12 o'clock, the clouds clear, and there is that bright blue sky. Because the clouds didn't define the sky. So all these myths do not define who we are. And then I ask myself that, yes, these groups may be covered under these clouds of limiting beliefs and self-doubt that has been socialized. But we have to find the real people. Because imagine when you have to spend so much energy trying to be someone you are not, fitting in a box. How can you ever reach your full potential in life? How can you ever find that authentic power within yourself from which to create your life and contribute to the transformation of our economy? Because you just have to toe the line. You have no opportunity to bring all of you, you know. And unfortunately, why those who don't fit in are ostracized is because the system gets threatened once you become yourself. So how do we then function in a way where we don't have to abandon ourselves? Because then we're going to see magic when these two groups function from their authentic power. And then, therefore, I say to myself, life happened, you know? We cannot change history. We cannot change what happened. We don't know how patriarchy started or sexism started. At least we know how apartheid and racism started. And therefore, we don't know what normal is. These people who are now saying must create what is new, they've never seen normal. This generation, black and white, we don't know what normal looks like. So we have to find these things within ourselves and take responsibility to deal with our limiting beliefs. Because no one is going to release us from those limiting beliefs. Because we know the truth, that we're not inferior. We know the truth, that we're not weak. We know the truth. So, in spite of the fact that we've never seen normal, I'm comforted by this testimony I've shared. That when this thing first happened when I was a teenager, when I found myself, I didn't know what normal looked like because all my life I had believed I was going to be a failure, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure we'll share more on that. Then I say, okay, looking right through history, fortunately we're in a higher education institution here. Looking right through history, when human beings would go through a difficult time like we face in South Africa and the continent and everywhere else, human beings would dig deep within themselves and find new creative ways to transform the situation. How did they do it? They were just human beings like us. How did they do it? And then I looked, okay. You know when we are dealing with a problem, we are all focused on the problem, we are trying to solve the problem, we're fighting against racism and sexism, we engaged in the problem. And I realized that when you are in the problem, you can't solve anything. Because you cannot transform any human system from within it. That's why I was sharing yesterday that the ANC promised us radical economic transformation. They've not been able to deliver on that because they're trying to transform an economic system within that system. So what our forefathers did was, they stopped. They stopped trying to fight and solve and so on, because we have to stop. And when you stop, you begin to observe. And when you observe, you begin to see the situation for what it is. And it is out of this seeing that they begin to question. And when you question the system, the human system, you find the solutions. Because remember, we are human beings, but we are also spiritual beings. Our capacity to change the situation, to create something new, is unlimited. So we shouldn't be scared about this thing of it's an insurmountable problem that cannot be solved. I mean, we can trace these things in history. The Reformation of Martin Luther, the era of enlightenment, the birth of science, industrial revolution, new economic systems and political systems. Those things were not done by angels who came from heaven, you see. They were done by us. We changed the world ourselves. So I want to say to us, we need to question all these human systems. Start with our culture and tradition that we want to hold on to dear life, because I suppose we think this is the only thing we have as black people. Let's question it. How is it contributing to our situation? Let's question religion. Let's question the economic system. How is it contributing to our situation? Let's question the political system. Let's engage all of us in this assignment. And we're leaving this with Fort Hare. They're going to call us again, because this thing can't stop here. It cannot stop here. Because we have to bring something new. And I believe that something new is within you, is within you, is within me. And once we find ourselves, we can find that something new and change our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma, for setting that scene for us. It really is going to be a good session, and I hope you guys are going to be engaging with us, because there's some really interesting facts that will be coming out of the book, just stories, and hopefully you guys will take some inspiration from that. Before we head to the panel discussion, let's welcome Missy Ngidi, who will be delivering a special item for us. Thank you.
Wena wendlovu velase goza kamkhubeli wena owawela uthukela bayede Nonkululeko Gobodo. Beautiful are your continents. Your continents unveils a beautiful narrative that will be forever memorable, engraved in Nonkululeko Gobodo. Beautiful things are spoken of you, woman of noble character. Gikuluma Nonkululeko Gobodo. With words of encouragement, you promote encouragement. Your fountain of understanding is remarkable. You speak with wisdom, intelligence. Your words are flawless, faultless, sound. A woman of humble spirit gains recognition, honor. She lacks nothing of value, accomplished, talented, gifted, proficient, a woman of noble character, a phenomenal woman, Nonkululeko Gobodo. We salute you. Siyakhothama namhlanje. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Wow, I think that just really, that was definitely a highlight for us. Thank you guys. Let's give a round of applause. Ma, you make it to the stage. Testing, testing, okay. For this portion of the program, we will just be engaging in a conversation with Mam Nonkululeko, just about some of the main issues in the book. Ma, let's start. Let's take it back a couple of years, where all of this began, where the whirlwind started. Let's go back to 1987, and when you got those results on that day. Please take us through what happened and what followed after that.
So, after that era of being lost and you suddenly have a clarity that you want to be a chartered accountant, you go back to school to study towards this, and you have this vision, and you are so focused on it, and my circumstances at the time helped me to focus on my vision because I had huge responsibilities. But, you know, you have a goal and you're pursuing it and you're committed to pursuing it. You don't think of anything else, you know. I mean, nothing is on your mind except qualifying to become a chartered accountant. And you are being told how difficult it is, how black people are failing. And I'm determined, I need to pass this thing first time. There's no way I'm going to do this thing that people are saying, no, you have even 5 opportunities. I'm like, no way. I have to pass this thing the first time. The importance of clarity about what you want and the vision. Then we going through the preparations, you know, the studies. When you're starting to be a CA, you have no life. For those 7 years, you literally just don't have a life. And then we sit for the board exams, we wait for these results to come out. And then around June 1987, the day of the results come. So that confident Nonku was like, I'm going to pass the first time. And anyone who was trying to discourage me, I would be like, no, I have no room for failure. I'm sorry, I'm not going to listen to you. That day, all that evaporated. The truth now was facing me. Right through that day, I can't concentrate. I'm watching the clock. Then 4 o'clock comes, they punish you. You know, why can't they be released at 10 o'clock or something?
Whole day.
So the whole day. So 4 o'clock comes, Doug Southgate, the partner, so the result would be given to the firm. Doug Southgate, the partner, calls me to his office. I already know what's going on. So I walk into his office. I'm trying to read his expression, nothing. I can't read anything. I'm like, I have to wait to hear my fate. And he gives me the phone. It was a partner from the East London office. All he said was, congratulations. I was like, I didn't listen to another word that he said. I dropped the phone in the dustbin, ran out of Doug's office, screaming right through the office. People are puzzled. What's going on? Has he gone mad? But it was really that sense of relief first. You know, I've passed. I don't have to do this trauma again of studying for this exam. Of course, I mean, I know I'm not expecting to be the first. I don't want to be the first. It's not even a vision of mine to be the first. There are people who wanted to be the first. So I could enjoy my success for at least for one day. Following day, it turns out I'm the first. Wow, oh, I'm the first or whatever. I mean, it was never my goal. It still doesn't ring a bell what it means to be the first. Then, until media descended onto my hometown of Amtata, my dusty town. Magazines, television, blah, blah, blah. I'm protesting. No, I don't need all of this attention. All I wanted, this was a personal goal. I don't need this attention. Until this reporter from the SABC sobered me up. That no, it's not about you. You are now a role model for many young people, women, and black people generally. And then it dawned on me that, this is a huge responsibility. Because now I have to succeed, not just for myself, but for all those who look up to me. And my life changed like that to this day.
In an instant.
In an instant.
You say that first black female chartered accountant goal was never on your vision board, but it happened and you made history. Did it put pressure on you going forward, like every decision you took after that? Because now the world's watching you, and your world became big but also very small because everyone is watching your every move. What pressure did that put on you, and how did that impact your trajectory in life?
No, even from that statement, from that reporter, that's when I realized the weight of responsibility. And first of all, I'm a private person. People probably think I'm arrogant or whatever, but I'm actually more of a private person. So I'm grappling with this public attention now because I now, have to give up my privacy. And it took a while for me to come to terms with that my life is no longer mine. I now have to share my life with everyone in public. So that sobers you up in the first place because you always, whatever you do, you know that it's going to have an impact on others. And if you are a role model, you have to be a true role model in the sense that, you're giving confidence to others to also dream. So you always have to succeed. You always have to dream bigger dreams so that others can see that it can be done. So, and so I just continued in that sense. But I'm always humbled by the fact that this thing happened 35 years ago, but I'm still an inspiration to this younger generation. I just find this thing just amazing, let alone that I benefited from being the first because it opened doors for me, opened opportunities for me. It still does today. But the fact that I still continue to be that inspiration. I walk into a lift and someone screams, and I already know, oh, okay, you are a fan. But to meet, black women chartered accountants who either, I came to their school to speak, or they saw me on TV or read about me, and so on. And that's so humbling, so humbling that my little life had such an impact on so many people.
You talk about the fame, and that was one of my following question. So you get this instant fame. How do you stay grounded during all of this? When you have people coming up to you in the lift and screaming your name, how do you stay grounded? What kept you there?
I suppose, growing up in Transkei was just a huge blessing because Transkei back then was such an inspirational environment where I had myself role models who had inspired my own journey professionals, doctors, lawyers, chartered accountants. Professor Nkutlu was one of them. Business people, who were running businesses in Transkei. So already I was socialized to believe that I could be a success. And so there was no big-headedness around this achievement. And especially the whole issue of being the first, for me, was just an act of grace. So, you can't go around being arrogant over an act of grace. It could have been anyone, and God chose me for whatever reason, and I just have to be grateful for that. So I think that environment I grew up in, it was not like I was the first in the village to get a degree. Okay, you've qualified as a chartered accountant, we're excited for you, but really, you're still just Nonkululeko.
Yeah. I think a lot of us sitting in this room at one point grapple with that question. What do I want to do with my life? And what I want to ask you, I know in your book you talk about at one point your parents were trying to push you in the direction of medicine. But tell us about how you ultimately ended up where you are now today. What was that aha moment for you?
Like everybody else, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just drifting through life. And growing up, in a family where my parents were in business, being exposed to business, being exposed to commercial dealings early in life, I think contributed to my desire and my vision to go into business. And then when I got that opportunity of going to work at my father's panel beating shop, and then I was exposed to accounting, Professor Nkutlu's firm were our auditors. I was exposed to auditing. I didn't even know that profession existed. And then I could dream. I just had clarity at that time that I wanted to be a chartered accountant. Because, I was being trained as a bookkeeper, and then I realized I like this thing. And my father, although he had been encouraging me into this area of medicine and healthcare, he never was one of those parents who would force children to do what the parent thinks. So he used to say, I want my children to be free thinkers. And so finding what you really like. And I was sharing today that it is so crucial for you to have clarity of what you want in life, because it focuses you. You always build from that one desire, and you can grow, from another level and another level. But when you are drifting and you don't know what you want, all roads lead to Rome, kind of thing.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that Mthatha was an inspirational place, and I would really like for you to share with the audience what set it apart for you. What made Mthatha such an inspirational place? You mentioned now that your father ran business, and in the book you talk about other ventures that your family also had the opportunity to run in the former Transkei. But just tell us a little bit more about that special place and how it helped you and maybe many other black business leaders from that area.
Mthatha at that time was so vibrant. And there was a university there. There was a university in my own hometown. The first firm of black chartered accountants was established in my hometown by Professor Nkutlu. And so, because of that kind of environment, you could dream those dreams of one day wanting to have my own firm. Because you can't desire what you don't know. You can't desire what you can't see, which is the unfortunate situation for most black people. Unless you are identified by a teacher or you happen to hear about something, you think that the life that you live is limited. So having that university there where civil servants were encouraged to study, and it was a buzz of activity. So at 4 o'clock, everybody's rushing to
Yeah.
the university and so on. There was no time to loaf around because everybody was engaged into a purpose of, studying or studying for higher education and so on. That's why I'm saying it was just so inspirational. I mean, it would have been strange if we were sitting around and not thinking that I should also develop myself and study further.
You were a young black woman in a time where it was not only in an industry that was dominated by white people, but it was also a male-dominated field. And here you were a young black woman and you were putting your hand up and saying, I want to be seen and I want to be heard. What were some of the challenges you experienced back then? It could be good experiences or bad experiences, and how that helped your personal growth.
We were very fortunate, I must say, that I chose a profession that was very structured in terms of your own personal development. So when you start with your training contract, there's already a structure for your own development, even within that firm. As a first year clerk to third year until you finish your articles. So you had this fortunate situation of just walking a path that would take you to where you want to be. And they've really created that environment where their offices were opened for us to start at night. So we had no excuse, really, not to qualify and study hard. But it was still apartheid South Africa. We still were facing challenges. And I remember that there was a lot of, in the office, there was a lot of, murmuring and complaining about, being discriminated against and so on. And because I had this vision of having my own firm one day, I wanted to make sure that I get all the training that I needed. And I made a decision very early that I'm not going to be complaining about I don't get the same opportunities as my white counterparts. I'm going to open my own opportunities. And the partners would wake up and I would have built my own portfolio of the kind of clients that I wanted to work on. And when, as a black woman, you are ignored or disregarded because there's an assumption that you are not capable, I was not going to fight with people about that. I just, because of my experience of having believed that I would be a failure in life because my mom was worried about me because I was quiet, I was always determined not to allow anybody to define who I am. And that saved me from, some of my colleagues were really traumatized by what they experienced in these firms. But I was able to shield myself from that because I didn't allow those opinions to define me. And so I just realized that in spite of the challenges that we face, if you don't focus on the challenge, but you focus on your vision and your dream, I promise you, things begin to happen. Yeah. Things fall into place for you, opportunities open for you, and this is what I would encourage young people, because the problems are insurmountable, and you don't know how you would overcome these problems. So it is very important for you to focus on your vision. Even as I pursued business, that was, I followed that kind of thinking.
You mentioned in your book, and you talk about this in your personal life, you talk about it in your professional life, where you are challenging bullies. You don't respect them, and you feel that it's important to challenge them when confronted with them. Just tell us a little bit more about, your experiences with those bullies in your personal life, but also in your professional life, and just how you dealt with it.
Yes, my first experience of bullies was when I was 8 years old. and we were staying in the certain part of the location, but we had to go to school in a sort of rough area of the location, and we had to pass through this area where there were young boys who didn't attend school, and they would just chase us and beat us, and books dropping, blah, 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 running for our lives. It was an everyday experience. So when you approach that area, you're already anticipating. You pull your bag close, your school bag close. And this happened, I'm not sure for how many months it happened, but the whole experience was so traumatic that at some point I couldn't take it anymore. Something snapped in me, and I dropped my bag and I stood up to these bullies and I said whatever I said to them. But I think just the expression in my face, they realized how traumatic this whole thing is. And from that day, things stopped, and the bullying stopped. We could go to school at peace. But that whole experience, that shock of the traumatic impact of bullying, and then when you've experienced this bullying in high school, that one was even worse, because I already was traumatized by the original one. So I've always found a way of dealing with bullies, even among our friends. If you're a bully, I would find a way to ostracize you, and you'll be loner who have no friends. But the one powerful experience was when I was working at my father's panel beating shop. There were two white guys who were the managers there. This was my first experience of racism and sexism in the workplace. So apartheid South Africa, we are being, treated anyhow. At 19 years old, I was like, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. You are not going to treat me like that, And I stood up to these bullies, and they learned very quickly that they're not going to treat me like they're treating everybody else. And it was not even because I was the owner's daughter, because I didn't even report the issue to my father. I dealt with those bullies myself, and they treated me as an equal in the workplace. And so that was my first experience of dealing with bullies in the workplace. And you met all of them, black and white men, right through your career, and immediately I identified them. Everywhere I went, I remember at TTC, they were bullies. They were just famous people who were known to be bullies. They knew where the buck stopped with me. They would never attempt that with me at all. I somehow made it clear that I'm not going to take that.
In reference to the bullies, you mentioned in the book that and I think it was at your father's workplace as well, where something as simple as not being able to pronounce your name and wanting to give you another name, that was more suitable to the person. I mean, tell us about that particular story, and it's why it was important for you to put your foot down at that very moment.
I forgot about that. So that was possibly one of those first experiences. So the guy asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Nonkululeko." "What?" "No, that's too difficult. I'm going to call you Mary." I'm like, "No, you will do." Really? I mean, really, those are the things that happened back then. Or because my father, because he was a political activist, he was very determined that none of his children would have English name, or what was called back then Christian names. So none of us had English names, and both my names were actually long. I'm Nonkululeko, Nompumelelo, so there was no hiding place. So it's like, "No, I'm just going to call you Mary." And you can imagine the response, because he's done that so many times that he just expected me to just accept that. I said, no, you will do no such thing. My name is Nonkululeko. You're going to write it down, you're going to practice it, and you're going to say it in full. And actually, for many years after that, I never allowed white people to shorten my name from that experience. It's later on in life where I was like, okay, you can come down, Nonkululeko, it's fine.
But it's your identity. It's your name. It's who you are. There's a really interesting fact, and I think when I got to this part of the book, and it's quite early on, something that really blew me, and I never knew this about you. Mam Nonkululeko was 17 and pregnant and married. Tell us about being this young woman who was entering into motherhood, becoming a wife, trying to still find a way through life. You were already dealing with so many challenges, and now you have these, these big milestones happening in your life. Talk us through that.
It's so nice to grow older and you then have perspective. Because for many years I was so ashamed of this part of my history that, I fell pregnant when I was 17. So I'm this middle child, third, in the middle, I'm the third born. I'm completely different from my older siblings who are outgoing, I'm quiet, and my mother is just worried about me. And after a while, she started to verbalize this fear. Yo, otherwise you're not going to make it in life. You're going to fail. And again, after a while, you start to believe, my mother was a very strong personality, this matriarch who says these things about me. Obviously, I believed it as a 7-year-old, as an 11-year-old. So I grew up with this low self-esteem because of that. Of course, it's only now that we understand childhood trauma. But that whole experience was very traumatic for me. And then you look for love from outside. You then fall pregnant, and then your parents are like, that's it, you're getting married. We're not going to have what they called an illegitimate child. And of course, you say, yes, boss. Yes, boss. You're not going to question that. And you find yourself 17, married, pregnant. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want to do in your life. That was just scary. You're trying to grapple with this big transformation of your life overnight, that you're finding yourself a wife and a mother to be. But it's amazing how those things strengthen you, because right there in that situation, you had to grow up all of a sudden. And the fact that I had a child gave me purpose, which is why I didn't play around at varsity, because I was thinking I have this responsibility of having to provide for this child. So it became a blessing. So it was in that panel beating shop of my father where I found myself out of dealing with those bullies and learning bookkeeping so quickly. And I realized I'm not this thing that my mother said I am, or what I believed all my life that I was a failure. I'm actually smart, I'm actually strong. And that changed my life. Because from there is when I had clarity about what I wanted to study, and suddenly I could function as myself, the new self that I found, and I was able to create a new life for myself from that experience. And so I always say that in every challenge, there's a gem there, So when we waste time focusing on the challenge, we're missing these gems. And we quit, and I must appreciate my parents who continued to encourage me to study, and they looked after my child and things like that. I appreciate that support system. But a challenge is not the end of the world.
When you started the conversation, you said that as a CA, or if you're studying towards becoming a CA, that you basically have no life for 7 years. So now you are a mother, you're a wife. At that point, you were part-time lecturer, you were trainee. You had all these responsibilities that you were juggling. Was there a personal cost to having to do all of that?
Yeah. You can imagine, you are married, you have a child. I took a gap year and lectured at UNITRA back then because I wanted to have a second child. And lecturing then gave me that space. I was a wife. And so, I was able to spend time with my child. And that is the only time that I ever sacrificed for my career, because I failed CTA and all of that because I was just focusing on the child and not focusing on my studies. And then a time came when I was like, no more baby, no more baby. I have a goal to pursue. So you can imagine how much we were paid as trainee accountants. And my ex was also, training, doing articles for legal articles. And we're paid peanuts. I'm like, we have a family to support. So UNITA offered me a part-time job. So I take this part-time job. So that 1 year, I was working, doing articles, studying CTA, lecturing part-time, and you have to succeed at all of those things. You can imagine, I literally didn't see my kids.
Yeah.
So it really came at a high cost, which is why I was so determined to pass the first time, because I was like, no, I'm not putting my children through this again. Just the trauma of an absentee mother. You see your son who's doing standard 1, I think it's grade 3, today failing because we're not there to support them. My two-year-old child who, remember, had spent all this time with the mother, and then one day the mother disappeared, literally. So you are told that, hey, she was potty trained, now is peeing on herself. I'm like, hey, put her back on nappies. I'll see her after my port exams. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll potty train afterwards.
Single motherhood. Later on, I was divorced, and I had to raise my children on my own. Single motherhood is something I don't wish on anybody.
Sure. So you went through all those challenges, but it was for a very specific purpose. Let's talk a little bit about, you had the dream, you wanted to be a business owner, you wanted to create employment for other people. Tell us a little bit more about where it all started with, I think it was Fultani Consultancy, and how we eventually ended up with having your name on the door.
You always have to dream in life. So the first dream was to become a chartered accountant. The second one was to have my own firm. But of course, you have to get exposure. So that's why I after our articles, I worked at TTC, got exposure and all of that. But the dream always calls you. It was after the military government. Hey, babesiphethe kakubi amajoni. Uyakhumbula Singa. And I was like, they hated educated people, so they were like treating us like nothing. So after a few months of this, I'm like, hey, I have a dream to have my own firm. Maybe that it's time now to pursue that. So history will always open a way for your dream. And everybody was afraid. How are you going to compete with the big 8? My father, who was also in business, was so afraid. How can you leave this big job, important job, to go on this risky venture? And I purpose not to listen to all those people, because I just said, are you expressing your own fears? Not that I'm not afraid, but this is my dream. I'm going to pursue it. But of course, you're young, you're naive, you're excited, you're going to have your own business. And that first month, it sobers you up. When you used to be guaranteed a salary, but now there are people who are looking up to you to provide that salary. Then you realize the Cheri-Ann has to go, because I have to market this business, I have to build this business and grow this business. And you start to knock on doors, and then you have these small clients, and you're like, no, I didn't leave TTC just to do doctors' accounts and lawyers' accounts. Where are the big jobs? You start to knock on the door of the Auditor General, and you are ignored. You're like, yay, they have to open this door for me. Let's kick the doors if we have to. Eventually, you get this big job that changes your life overnight. Out of 2 partners and 2 clerks, I think, that we had at that time, 2. Literally, guys, I promise you, when you have a vision, things change and they fall into place. So we get this assignment. I open the letter from the Office of the Auditor General after kicking and screaming. And I'm like, huh? we need 30 people to do this job. Wow. So fortunately, my partner was, Sindizilo, was lecturing at UNITRA. So that whole week, we were interviewing third year and second year students. We grew in a week from those 6 people, or whatever number we were at that time, to 30. Overnight, just like that. And I'm not saying, life is like that all the time, that there are no challenges, because it took 18 months to get there. But when you are focused on your vision, and you have clarity of what you want, promise you, I've seen it over and over again. Synchronicities, things falling into place and all of that. So when I was knocking at that door, there was this big job that was being farmed out. If I didn't knock, that job would have gone to the big accounting firms.
You did not sit and wait for opportunities to fall in your lap. And I think that's an important message. You literally went there and said, hi, I am here, and what do you have for me? And I think that's what we need to do. We need to be fearless if you want to be a success. But tell us about, so we've got Gobodo Inc., and that's your baby. You have started the medium black accounting firm, and then it wasn't enough. You still had that little itch. We are destined for greater things. Tell us about that journey, because you went from a couple of offices. You had one in Mthatha, I think, when you started, and then one in Bisho, and now renowned everywhere. Tell us about how you got to that point, the challenges, the sleepless nights, all of the good and the bad, so to speak.
So, you come to a place where you've grown as a person. You've outgrown being a small town accountant. And you're grappling with these changes that are happening within you, that I need, to climb a new mountain. But you're comfortable. You're in your hometown, you are known. When you knock on doors, the first thing they ask, what can we do for you, Mam Thembu? Qhudeni. How can I go to a big place and start afresh where I'm not known? You are so scared. I remember I would come to my Bishop office and walk in this esplanade in East London where we were staying, and walk there grappling with this question: can I do it? Can I make it in Johannesburg? What can you do? And then fortunately for us, there was this opportunity for us to go onto this program by Merrill Lynch and arranged by Investec. And we go to New York, and I'm walking the streets of New York, and even on this program, investment banking, something I'm not exposed to, I do well in this program. I'm like, I can succeed anyway. I go back to Joburg and I'm saying, let's move, because we've been in talks with some of my colleagues, but now I had the courage to take that step further. Again, it doesn't mean that there were no challenges. There were many challenges that we have to read the book for, but in spite of those challenges, I would not quit on my vision of a medium-sized black accounting firm. It's these synchronicities that I'm talking about, because first of all, even when I was in Transkei, we had black people who were supporting us, they would fight for us to get these opportunities that used to be, given only to white firms. Without those kinds of support, there would have been no Gobodo Incorporated. But even there, right at that moment, when I'm dreaming about this medium-sized black firm, there is nothing. But all of a sudden, there's this opportunity that Stella Staw is going to give us the audit of Transnet. And just getting that opportunity at that time, I could build my Johannesburg office on that. So I'm saying, when we're afraid to dream and we're waiting for conditions to be perfect, they're not going to come to you when you don't take that step. You don't move forward with your vision and dream. They find those who are moving with their dreams. And even when we moved now from medium-sized to this big black firm, S&G, it was the same thing, synchronicities, things falling into place, great opportunities opening for you. So we shouldn't be afraid to pursue our entrepreneurial dreams. And I'm not saying that entrepreneurship is for everyone, but those who have the courage, like I had, I always say that I was a leader of an accounting firm. I never even enjoyed auditing, but there were those who maybe wouldn't have had the courage to start that practice, but who could come and be my partners. They were very good at auditing and things like that. It is that collaboration of us coming together, forgetting this little thing of yours, you know, because black people mostly, because we've seen so much fighting in business that we want to just own our little things so that we can be safe, but we're never going to expand if we don't take that risk and give up, you know, the ego who just wants a little thing and build bigger things.
With S&G, there was that moment when you were all tendering for that the big tender, and you were up against, at this point, I think it was the big four. These are the white firms who have been enjoying all the tenders all the years, and now here you are, a big black firm, and you are competing with them. There was that moment you had like a small seed of doubt. How did you overcome that? And just share with the audience what happened after that, like the benefits that you reap from taking that bold step.
So of course we're comfortable. We've built these medium-sized black firms, you know, we are successful. We never even thought that would get there. And then I persuade my colleagues to build something bigger, because at that time, you know, BE was working, these white firms where they could win jobs without us because they were BE compliant, so we're just losing ground. And I just realized that if we don't do something, it's going to be the end of us. And of course, I mean, people are afraid. I had to persuade them to again risk and open themselves to something bigger. But okay, you do the merger, but what if the market is not ready for us? There was just this fear among my partners. And when these opportunities opened for us, so there was this debate, should we now continue to tender with the big accounting firms, or should we tender on our own? But the decision was, we wanted to do big things, so you know, we're going to tender on our own. So we go to this conference with Victor Segese, who was the CEO, and I was the executive chair. We're in Singapore in this conference. Text messages are coming, phone calls are coming. Guys, no, we can't do this. You know, we can't take this risk. Let's just partner with the big accounting firms. And that fear comes. What if they are right? What if we're risking what we've built in 15 years and we lose everything because the market is not ready for a big black accounting firm? And I had to leave the conference and go to my room and face this fear, because we have to face the fear. You know, otherwise it's going to envelop you. Yeah. I faced this fear. And fortunately, because I'm a spiritual person, you know, I'm praying, what should we do? I mean, you don't have a crystal ball. You know, you have to plunge in or fear. So fortunately, God gives me this word, you know, of Peter who's walking on water. He says to me, Nonkululeko, you are out of the boat already. You are walking on water. There's no more Siswe and Tsaluba. There's no more Gobodo. You can't go back there. What are you going to do? Are you going to fear and sink, or are you going to be courageous? I found my courage. I came out of there, said to Victor, just tell these people, we are not going to do that. We said we wanted to do big things. We're going to do big things. You could smell fear along the passages there while we're waiting for the results. Everybody's fearful. It's fearful. You know, our staff, shame. They are listening to this vision of a big black firm, but they're fearful also. Yeah. Will it succeed? Is this a pipe dream? Because everyone is saying we're going to fail. You know, they're saying it in our faces. You know you're going to fail. Most you are black people are going to fight among yourselves. And we're saying, this measure is going to succeed. I personally was in charge of making sure that the measure succeeds while Victor was involved. We were coordinating the firm, but I just had that task. And then one day, hey Nina, stop this fear. Then one day, we get this phone call. We were actually in the boardroom. Fortunately, we were working on another opportunity. So I get this phone call. I see the person. I'm like, yo, let me step out. And the person says, Nonkululeko, the chairman of the audit committee at Transnet, Nonkululeko, the board of Transnet have decided to award Cheri-Ann Gobodo appoint Cheri-Ann Gobodo as the sole auditor of Transnet.
Wow.
Yeah. That changed everything.
Yeah.
I went back screaming, okay, guys. That solidified our measure. Everybody relaxed. Oh, it's not a pipe dream after all. Because courage will always be rewarded, you know. And from there, then other opportunities opened. We're able to grow our business and stabilize our measure.
That's amazing. We all know the success stories. And I think it's important for us here as the audience to also just touch base on maybe the ventures that weren't necessarily successful. Because, you know, it's easy to see the glitz and the glamour and see the sunshine, but there were opportunities that didn't necessarily work out. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, and what were some of the lessons you took away from it?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, that whole measure was challenging in itself, because putting together these two medium-sized firms was just such a huge challenge. I mean, we were challenged to the core. And it was just so easy for people to want to quit, because, first of all, everybody's like, how dare you challenge the status quo? So the media is on our case, and we have to fight all of these fights. The other firms who are feeling threatened now, they're coming with offers of a measure to take us out, and then our partners would be saying, guys, why are we working so hard building these systems that these firms already have? Let's just merge and forget this dream. And I'm like, no, we're building a legacy for future generations, because black people need to know that we can do these things on our own. So those were, as we are building this, these are some of the challenges that we faced. And then there was this one opportunity. And now it's been a winning streak, now winning these big projects that we never thought ever would be able to do. And I remember when we were knocking on the doors, we used to be told that, hey Nina, we raise funding from overseas. Who is going to give us funding when our auditors are Cheri-Ann Gobodo? There's no way we can ever give you these jobs. But then it did happen. And we are told now, our first assignment in Transnet was a capital raising, something we've never done. And it was a way of proving ourselves. So we're sleeping at Transnet, trying to make this thing happen. So I'm told that there was this call with fund managers from all over the world. And someone asked from New York or London or wherever, who are the auditors? And someone said, Cheri-Ann Gobodo. And they said, eh? So when my partners were telling me this, and I said, this is Africa. Who did he expect the auditors to be? So we are on this winning streak. And then we get this opportunity to tender for Sasol. So, you know, that pride of, now we're going to break through into the private sector. We prepare, we're ordering our associate partners from overseas to come and help us and all of that. We were so confident that we're going to get this thing after this winning streak. And then that letter comes that says, we regret. I don't know what happened there. It was like our confidence was hit so hard. We're wallowing in this sorrow for months. And I'm watching us wallow in this. Myself also, I'm wallowing in this sorrow. And then I have to wake up to say, hey, we're going to lose this firm if we don't come out of this thing. We're grieving over something that we don't even have. And I just had this thing of, no, let's organize a team building exercise. Let's just go away as partners. So that we need to find ourselves again. And I was saying, when you are skateboarding and you are hit by a big wave, you fall and go under the waves. Yeah. If you don't wake up, you're going to drown. Guys, we need to wake up. There's another wave that's going to come that will succeed in. Hey, I learned a lesson from there, how people lose what they already have because of one thing that has happened, and we now build a whole belief system of how we are now failures because of one little thing. And let's not do that, because challenges will come, but we can overcome them.
Yeah, success really is a mindset as well. If we feel like we're unworthy and we're not capable of it, our minds are so powerful, and it can really hold us back from achieving that greatness. Just talking about the mind, you are quite candid and open about issues of mental health, and you talk about anxiety, and you talk about depression, and just some of the challenges that you experience with mental health over the years. Tell us about some of the key experiences in your life, and why it was so important. And I mean, why it's so important for us today, because mental health is something that we struggle with today. Why it is important for us to not ignore that and really address the issues that we are facing.
We've gone through a lot as women and as Black people. We've experienced all these traumatic experiences in life. And for a long time, we didn't understand the impact of childhood trauma. So those experiences as a 7-year-old were responsible for this life of ups and downs that I share in the book. And because it was so confusing, I used to be criticized because I was quiet. And when I grew old, I was criticized because I was now strong. I'm like, okay, who am I then? I mean, I can't win whatever I do. And for the longest time, I used to say, take it or leave it, this is who I am. But because of the impact of these challenges and how I would lose myself, as I'm saying, because I would walk out of my business that I built and say, Black people will never succeed, and then, go into a very big difficulty. I came to a place of saying, there's something wrong. I need to investigate what this something wrong is. And I share these experiences candidly in the book because I've realized that, first of all, we don't understand mental illness, and secondly, we are in denial about it. Most people don't even want to go there. They don't even want to acknowledge that. And when you go through depression and anxiety, it's just the most challenging thing because you are like drowning and you don't know how to come out of this difficult situation. And you have to read the book to hear how I dealt with that. But I decided to be open and honest about that journey because I want us as people to acknowledge these sicknesses, because we're never going to find this something new if you don't deal with our brokenness. We are living with such brokenness, especially in Black families, which we're now going around this vicious cycle of brokenness. Our parents were broken, raised us to be broken, and now our children are broken. And I always say, our grandchildren must be spared from this thing. So if you don't address this issue of mental illness, especially as the black nation, we're never going to find this something new.
Mam Nonkululeko, thank you for that. I have one more question that I'm going to ask before we invite Dr. Rungani onto the stage with us. Tell us a little bit more about your initiative, Awaken Global. Talk to us a little bit about what inspired that and what you hope to achieve with that initiative.
Yes. So, I mean, we are at that age where you are saying we cannot leave our children with this mess. You know, yes, it is an insurmountable problem. This whole issue of gender and racial inequality, it's something that we need to address if we're ever going to find this something new. And I was always bothered by this issue that for our situation to change, others need to change. White people must change, or men must change. When they change, everything will be fine for black people and women. And the reality of the situation is that all of these years, we're still living with inequality. Today, as I was sharing in the beginning, black people and women are not free. And I was saying to myself, we can't change history, you know. What happened, but what if we stopped fighting this scourge of inequality and focus on ourselves in terms of dealing with these limiting beliefs? Because myths are not harmful in themselves, but they are harmful to us because we believe them. Yeah. So a belief is a belief. You can stop believing it once you wake up to the truth of the situation, where you realize that I'm actually not inferior. Like, I woke up one day and realized that I'm actually not a failure, you know. And I believe strongly that as much as we have to do this thing as a society, but it starts with you. Because you experience racism yourself, you experience prejudice as a woman yourself, and if you can start focusing on ourselves, then there will be this groundswell of transformed minds. Because we cannot find this something new until we free our minds from this thing. And we've been talking about this thing for a long time, and now we have to put this thing into practice. Because when I wake up to realize that I'm not inferior, I'm going to help someone else. It's not going to stop with me, you know. And the next thing, you've got 500 people who suddenly realize that they are not inferior, and they can dig deep and find their own creativity, and we begin to build something new. I just see this vision of these people who are out of that box and creating something new. And this is what I want to dedicate myself. And I'm not arrogant to say I can change everything, but I'm saying I can shift things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And whatever I shift, someone else will build on it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Guys, can we all just give Mam Nonkululeko a round of applause for that? Now, thank you. I would like to invite Dr. Rungani onto the stage with us, where we'll just talk a little bit more about some of the themes and issues in the book. For those of you who are sitting in the audience, I hope you've put your name on the register, the students specifically. We will be giving away 3 hampers after our session now. So I hope you have had an opportunity to get your name down. Dr. Rungani, welcome.
Mike.
Oh, there we go.
1, 2. Is it working? Oh, okay.
Okay. Doctor, let's first of all start by just giving just a brief introduction of who you are and just what some of your interests are to those of us who may not know your profile.
Okay. just that I feel like, okay, can you hear me? The technical team, you must come and fix there. Okay, so my name is Ellen Rungani. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Business Management, where I'm lecturing financial management, business management, and entrepreneurship from second year, third years, until honors level. I'm also involved in different community engagement activities where I work with Inectas, which is an international organization, which we have got 53 countries which participate. So I'm one of the mentors. I'm the faculty advisor for University of Fort Hare. And I also work with higher education for student entrepreneurship, where we mentor students, to make sure that they commercialize their ideas into real businesses. I'm also the chairperson for the task team, which looks at the gender-based violence at the University of Fort Hare. So I work with Prof. Ariana Olisven, where I'm chairing that task team to make sure that we create equity, we create a safe environment for our students and staff. So, yeah, that's all about me in short.
Thank you, Doctor. I think let's open the conversation with you, if you don't mind, and let's zoom in a little bit on the entrepreneurship. So here we have an example of how Mam Nonkululeko had a dream, and how she was able to make that dream a reality. And it started with investment many years ago during apartheid South Africa by the Transkei Development Corporation. Mom, I think that's the right organization. Let's talk a little bit about current South Africa. What opportunities are there for our entrepreneurs to be able to start their own businesses and really take their fate into their own hands, so to speak?
Okay, thank you very much. So you see that when you look at the South African environment at the moment, with entrepreneurship, one has to see an opportunity where others see problems. Because even during war, you can make money. During a crisis, you can take, like what Ma was saying, that always try to change, your lemon into lemonade. So when you are in a space like South Africa where there are many challenges, we have to then, as entrepreneurs, try to see that when I look at this challenge, how can I turn it into an opportunity and provide a solution that makes me to make money out of it. Like right now we've got ESCOM issues of load shedding. A lot of people are suffering because there is load shedding. But there's, within that challenge of load shedding, there are a lot of business opportunities that can come out. So instead of us crying about load shedding, I think we need to go a step further to say, it's here and it's going to be here for a long time. How do we turn around the situation to our advantage? People want solar systems, others cannot afford it. We think outside the box. How do I, service maybe a single person, a single mother who is coming from a 6 to 9 job and wants to give their children food? How can I step in and, assist that person whilst I make money? So it's all about yourself thinking outside the box and seeing opportunities where others see challenges, yes. And I think even in the book, Mama has always seen, where people thought there were barriers, she always shined to show that you can actually rise in those humble settings.
Have we created a conducive environment, though? Yes, we can see the opportunities. But have we placed enough emphasis on making sure that we provide a system where black businesses, women-led businesses can really flourish? And maybe, Mom, you can also answer this question, but what are some of the challenges that's really keeping us from breaking through?
Okay. So when you look at entrepreneurship, okay, let's look at us as blacks. Are there any support programs? Are there any, is the environment supportive? But what we need to understand is that the environment, it's supportive, it's 50-50, but it doesn't have to start with the environment. It starts with the individual. You as an individual, you must have that drive to look for opportunities. There is no way funding is going to be available for everyone. Capital, it's a scarce resource across the world. You knock on the doors. Those who knock on the doors are the ones who get an answer. So as much as the government, yes, it's doing a lot, private sector is doing a lot, there are support programs that are there. Of course, one of the challenges that, the support programs for entrepreneurship, which are there, some of them are imposed on entrepreneurs. They are not specifically answering their specific needs. It's a matter of people just saying, okay, we're going to go to Mtata or Iduchwa and we are going to give financial management training. Do they need that financial management training? Maybe they don't need financial management training. Maybe they need, planning skills first, to take out their business plan into reality. So there's a mismatch. When you look at literature and also when you go around checking with entrepreneurs, you see that support is there. A lot of investment has been done in South Africa, but one challenge is that there is a mismatch with the support, and also some of the entrepreneurs are not even aware of that support, that it exists. But my takeaway is that you as an entrepreneur, the first thing is your attitude. You need to fix your attitude, because what has happened is that even those entrepreneurs who were able to access funding, some of the black entrepreneurs who were able to access any support that was coming from either government or the private sector, some of them misused those opportunities. One minute you get money to build your business. We are obsessed with Mercedes-Benz, BMWs. You want to buy yourself a car, but that was money for business. So that also, affects the reputation of us as black businesses, which we need to correct, so that it doesn't affect the next entrepreneur. Yes.
Mom, just some of the challenges that you experienced as a black businesswoman trying to make it, and what advice you can give to, first of all, identify some of those challenges, and just to give other, aspiring business people that guidance on how do you overcome it.
I mean, there'll always be challenges. There'll always be challenges in life, barriers to entry and things like that. And I think our biggest challenge in South Africa is this, again, being conditioned to think that all you have to do is go to varsity, get an education, and get a job. That is just the mindset, first of all. So it's not natural for people to think, entrepreneurship. And I'm not saying, let's jump into entrepreneurship without gaining some experience into a certain area. There's all rare people like Steve Jobs who could dream out of the box and come up with something new, and even that is possible. But once you've gained the experience, you then get the courage to go into an area that you know the challenges that are in those areas. By the time you get there, you have experience, you've built a network. I always discourage young people from just jumping into something new. You've not built a network, and the next thing, you don't have a market for your product, and this big problem of funding. And I always just want to say to people that once you have a dream, never allow funding to be the stumbling block, because as much as funding has been a problem, that has never been a stumbling block for me personally, because the dream will always open the opportunities for us. But it's a question of, now we have these programs of being taught entrepreneurship early in life, because was shifting the mind now from students only thinking about a job. Now they can start thinking about entrepreneurship and opening their minds to identifying those opportunities that others do not see. And the more we can shift the mind towards baking our own cakes, instead of just chasing this slice of the pie, the more we're going to see more and more black people and women going into business.
In terms, let's see. Oh, no, I'll keep it very close to me. Recent stats that I just read said that about 93% of the working age in South Africa are black people. Yet when we look at the stats, black people and particularly women are still not occupying those high positions, those positions where they're really making the decisions. So I'm just going to share some of the statistics that I have here. And this was an article that was published by Bloomberg, and they released some statistics on the JSE, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and they were talking about how board control by black people was at 39%, 21% male and 18% female. We had 0% of entities listed are 100% black owned. And then they just broke down the industries where we have the highest black participation: transport and tourism at 78% and 52%. And then we had agriculture and finance at 17%. What are some of the key approaches? And I know you can't speak for government or maybe even the private sector, but what are some of the key approaches we really should be looking at as a country to improve black involvement in our economy?
Okay. So, as you can see, I was, when you talked about agriculture, because naturally, you would want blacks to be involved in agriculture because from our background, most of our ancestors, if you have to look back, we were raised, using money from such kind of activities. But now, you see, what needs to be done is that we need to break the barrier of our children to want to think that this job is not stylish, this is not fashionable. That's why if you go now on LinkedIn, you see that there is a vibe now where they are trying to make farming fashionable. Because, this generation now, they deal with the vibe, So you have to make it fashionable so that they see that, doing agriculture, owning a farm or starting from having patience also, because you see that our generation as blacks, we want instant things, instant everything. And then some of these things now that, like these sectors, like agriculture, it needs you to be patient. It's going to take some years for you to start getting a return on investment. So maybe what is needed to be done is that we have to nurture, that skill, at a young age, so that if you see most non-black, farmers, their children start going to the farm on holidays. Even if it's the grandfather who has got a farm, they start getting involved, so that you plant that seed, and you make it, it becomes part of them. And it becomes natural. But as it is now, most of our black parents, they want us to, they are still wanting us to also pursue their dreams on their behalf. They wanted to be accountants, they wanted to be doctors, they wanted to be this traditional. And also I think it's an issue of where black techs, remember, where I'm coming from, I cannot choose a profession which is going to take longer for me to make money. Transport industry, once you buy a taxi, ching, 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 money starts coming in. So because I'm thinking of where I'm coming from, because they are waiting for that money, you see. So I think it's important then that it starts with, even the programs that we're offering at the universities, even when you start at basic education, to make sure that the way they are putting the STEM subject, you see, when they introduced the STEM subjects, people started to resist, but at the end of the day, they started getting in, and then we have now a lot of people who joined engineering, all those technical subjects. So the same concept, because it has worked, it can be used now, to identify especially these, and have incentives. There are scholarships that can be done, bursaries to say black students who are doing agriculture, black students who are going to be in this sector are going to be funded, so that you incentivize. Yes, because it's all about the attitude that we have to change the mindset. Mindset shifting is the key. Yes.
Mam Nonkululeko, you just to touch base on what Dr. Rungani said about, for example, with the farmers starting early, getting the kids involved. That was something that you experienced. You were exposed to business at a very young age. How important is that for, getting our children ready for the future? I think we've long passed that point now where we can just, just shoot the breeze and just figure it out as we go along. You were exposed at a very young age. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, I mean, I can't overemphasize that enough, that exposure earlier on in life is the foundation that you need for the future. And unfortunately, most black people don't have that exposure. When they go to varsity and their counterparts, you're studying law, your counterpart, the grandfather was a judge, the father is a judge, you have no concept of that at all. So black people unfortunately have to start from scratch in everything, agriculture, business, and everything else. So that's why we need this generation of black people who can now be the foundation for the future, so that our grandchildren, don't have to start from scratch as we are doing. And unfortunately for women as well, the other big thing is all these domestic responsibilities upon women. That situation is unfair. That men are allowed to pursue their careers and their dreams, because they don't have the same responsibilities in terms of the family itself. So women shy away from these big positions sometimes. I'm not saying they're not barriers, but sometimes I know, when I was in practice, I would nurture these women and they become partner and so on, and then they get married. And once they get married, they're like, no, I'm gonna resign because I need a job. I need to start a family now. I need a job that will allow me to start a family. So you lose that pipeline that you've been working on. And the husband doesn't have to make those sacrifices. Yes. The husband can just pursue the career to whatever level that they want. So we need to equity now in sharing these domestic responsibilities, because if there is that equity, then we can develop more people in specialist areas, more women in specialist areas, which is why more and more men go into business than women.
And to just add, the blackmail that women are given when they have to choose between their career and their family. I promise you, if I'm to get married today, and maybe my partner is in Johannesburg, society will expect me to uproot my life from East London, move to Joburg. It won't be the other way around. And now you have got this career that you are building, and everything has to stop. And then if you are coming from that family, which is cultural, that's what they'll tell you, that so, you have to go and join your husband. You can't, you're still a young couple, so you can't, So those are some of the things, that we have to try and to, change the perspective that, because as a woman now you end up saying, should I save my marriage or my career? Or should I not get married?
at
I do.
all?
I know that I've established myself.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because an issue that maybe needs more conversation is the issue of cultural and traditional systems. But it is such a sensitive topic, and I think particularly in provinces like the Eastern Cape, which is very traditional. How do we even start to have that conversation? Where do we begin?
Well, you see, we have got, in any institutions, like institution of higher learning, we have stakeholders. The chiefs are our stakeholders, traditional leaders are our stakeholders, traditional leaders are our stakeholders. So these are conversations that we have to make. But when we are making these conversations, we don't have to use an arrogant approach. When we make these conversations, we have to first appreciate the good things that we see in the culture, and then also then try to educate them that culture evolves. It's not static. So culture evolves, and as culture is evolving, we keep the good things and then we improve on those that we think that we can change. So it's a conversation that has to be made, but the approach that we have to use is that it shouldn't be an arrogant approach, but it's more of a mutual understanding, shared, to see that it's a shared vision that as much as we want the boy child to succeed, like now they should also it should move with the girl child, so that there's equity.
What is strange for me is that this culture was, came from the olden days. The situation was different then. But now, in a situation where we are both working and we are both professionals, let's say, and then the wife has this extra burden of domestic responsibilities, and the husband still has those expectations of what my mother used to do. So I want my wife to cook for me. I want my wife to I don't want my shirts to be washed by anybody else except my wife. And I'm like, seriously? Seriously, my dear? Remember, at the end of the month, there are 2 checks on the table. We're living this lifestyle because we're both working.
Yes.
Whereas before, maybe it was the husband who was working and the wife had those responsibilities. You still want all the benefits of your mother who never worked, while enjoying these other financial benefits that the working wife is bringing. I mean, guys, this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. This whole fairness that we're talking about, people have to wake up from this mindset of what used to happen before and understand that we can have this equity, And you're right, Doctor, because we need to engage in these conversations, and it has to start with families. Because in my own family, I preach these things to my sons.
Yeah.
And my son is a very successful son who is the MD of Wealth at Old Mutual, who's divorced. Why are you laughing at me? Who's divorced, but is sharing 50-50 in raising of the 2 girls. Literally, this week, they are with the father. This other week, they are with the mother. Literally, 50-50. Until they protested, no, this thing of suitcases, I must have clothes at my father's place and clothes at my mother's place. Well, he's rich. He can buy clothes, 2 clothes, sets of clothes. But because out of COVID, he realized that, this thing of I'm taking the kids off only over weekends. How is my ex-wife going to build? She still started a new business. How is she going to build a new business with these responsibilities? And he has been doing it for 2 years now. COVID, 2 years now, and it's working. And that ex-wife now can build her own business because for a week she can focus on her business. And now he's also wise So he says to his managers, "Hey Nina, don't start meetings at 7 o'clock. Some of us are dropping off kids." He's the MD, he can say that. But before, he used to sit there and expect the ladies in the team to start those meetings at 7 o'clock. Can you see how when you start to change this mindset, no, even and the environment improves, other members of the group, of the team now are benefiting from meetings cannot start at 7 o'clock, and we can begin to have these changes of it can be. He's the MD of wealth.
Yes.
And he can do this thing. In fact, for 6 months, he didn't have a, you know, the housekeeper was part-time because, I mean, it was a bachelor kind of thing. And then for 6 months, he was waking up the kids, making sure they are ready, breakfast, lunch, preparing this lunch, until he was going out of his mind. He was like, "Yo, how did you used to do these things, Mama?" How did you used to do these things? But now there's an appreciation of this domestic burden on women. And it's traumatic, guys.
Yeah.
Now, I know when I divorced, I was traumatized by building a career as a CFO and having all of these responsibilities as a woman on top of building my career. It's not fair.
And what is surprising is the selective amnesia that the other gender has, that we can't hide behind culture. Because if you want to stick to culture, it means I must be a stay-at-home mom, I must be a queen, and you must provide. And then when you come back from work, you get your food prepared. So if men, or if culture can actually accept that a woman can go to work, why don't they accept the other things now? To say, when you are going to work, then it means that things have changed. They have to shift. They cannot be the same. So you can't choose one side of, you know, to relax one side of culture. And then, you know, it's always to their advantage. Not unless if the person, the person has been converted because of personal experience. That's when. So like what Mom said, it has to start with the family, so that, you know, your values, family values, they will shape you, and once they shape you, you go and transfer it to the people that surrounds you, and it has got a ripple effect. Yes.
Thank you. I would like for us to open it to the floor just to get some questions, because when some of the statements were being made, I saw some expressions out in the audience, and I'm hoping that people will take this opportunity to just raise their hand and not be fearful to have this. So this is an open dialogue. All views are welcome. So let's engage. But before we do that, let's just get Mashilo. I think we are going to do our giveaway real quick, and then we're going to go to the questions. So just get your questions lined up. Hi there. Okay, guys, sorry, this is my note. We just have to switch over from the generator just for a few minutes, so we're going to have a cut-in break in our proceedings. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute break while we do that, and then we're going to do the raffle, and then we'll do some questions. Thank you.
checking. 1, 2. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Number 7, and that is? Doctor, shall we get you to do one?
Yes.
Number first?
Number 10. Yes.
Number 20.
Number 2.
Okay. Mavata awomso.
Imagine. Hayi bo bethu nani. Hayi.
Well, to be fair.
The numbers are biased.
They're biased.
Ow.
Not a single woman.
I know. Marcelo, let's just ask one question to only the women students. I have to give a gift to a woman. Just ask a question.
Must I ask one of the questions from yesterday? Let's do that in 1 second. Let's do this one. This one's easy. Where are our female students? Can I see your hands? Don't be shy. This is your
Don't be
opportunity.
shy.
Just you.
Just you. Yeah.
Just you. Okay. I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to need you to help me look for the hands because I'm a little bit blind. At what age did Mam Nonkululeko fall pregnant? Right here.
At age 17.
Okay. Our time now is 5 to 7. Let's take the next 10 minutes, I think, for questions. Can we get some hands in the audience? Now's the opportunity to ask the burning questions. Come, let's see the hands. Okay, I've got one hand. Can I just see a couple more?
The lights are not on. It's so
It's
dark.
a switch over, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's still happening.
Okay, I've got 2 more hands there. Okay, so let's go through that question depending on how complicated it is. And then we'll move on to the next, and then we'll answer them in sets of 3. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, molweni.
Molo.
Okay, bengicela ubuza mama ne. I've been exposed to SNG from utata wesithi mandibukele i-numbers zelotho for yena ne. Then kuzothiwa auditors are Sizwe Ntsalo Gobodo. And then recently, I think it was 2018, there was something about grant Tontin. I want to know, how did that collaboration come about?
Okay, I'm going to take another.
Yeah. Let's take another question. This gentleman over here. There we go. And then we've got the lady at the back. There we go.
Malo mama, igama lami Khuselo, and I'm happy to say that I work from Auditor General, South Africa.
Wow.
My question is relating to the beginning of your statement around how South Africa is growing and what the generation has done thus far. But then, as a person who is involved a lot in terms of people development, because I'm really passionate about helping other people, and what I've discovered is that there is within the education system, because in order for us to build South Africa, we need to invest in education. What I've identified is that the schools are focusing on getting 100% pass rate. So now when they've identified that a student is not able to perform very well in mathematics they say that go and do maths lit.
Go into?
Mathematics literacy, because they see it's easier. And also, I also identified a certain school within East London that has been getting 100% pass rate, is that around June, when they see that the student is not gonna pass matric, they say that we're not gonna write the final exam, but you write the second, sub or something like that in January in the following year. So now you're not gonna be counted on the number of students. So now, in order for the school to get 100%. So now the people that are in a position to grow South Africa in true education, they have a self-interest of seeing 100% than getting people to go to the finish line, inspire people to unleash their own potential, to become the people they're supposed to be in. Because we have different students when it comes to schools, that others are not so bright, others they find it very difficult to learn. So they need different capacity to be taught about something. And then also now we could link that to the PSYCA exams. As you can see from the stats of the PSYCA exam, black people are not passing. The pass rate for black people is very low. And now someone else who want to be a chartered accountant, who is a chartered accountant, say, oh, you want to be a chartered accountant? No, don't go there. It's very difficult. And I was surprised when you say that you were scared when you were actually doing your board course, but you are not going to be successful because of how difficult it is. What mindset should we as people from today do in terms of changing that to awaken the potential of the people and young people of South Africa? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the lady at the back there, and then we'll answer these 3 questions, and then the next round we'll get you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Lungiswa Mhlanga. It happens that I'm coming from Tata. I studied at UNITRA. I just want to ask, especially from the historically disadvantaged town, you'll find that there are bright ladies, okay, and there are bright kids that they want to study, they want to do accounting. But when they come to the firms to do the articles, you find that they don't have, they have a low self-esteem. Like they cannot break that, because you find that they can't speak English properly. They can't do other things that other people that had an advantage of going to better schools are able to do. How can you assist, especially the young kids, to ensure that, to boost their self-esteem, to ensure that they achieve whatever they are intended to achieve in life? Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll answer those, and then we'll do the next round. Mam Nonkululeko, maybe we get you to answer the question on the Grant Thornton deal and just the self-esteem and the firms not taking in women. And then maybe Dr. Rungani, you can talk about, the self-interest and how the education system's actually, manipulating the system, so to speak, for their own interests, instead of really focusing on getting the education our kids deserve in order to make a success in life. Thank you.
I suppose, there's a lot of misunderstanding with this move from SNG to SNG Grant Thornton. And I know that I got a lot of we're now giving up on the black dream, a black femme dream. But I can assure you that we are not giving up on that dream, because SNG Grant Thornton is still majority black, majority black managed. But it is crucial for us as black accounting firms to have international licenses. because you cannot compete with the international accounting firms without an international license. And that what actually also happens is that if there's a firm overseas that has a branch in South Africa, you automatically become an auditor of that firm because you are part of this international association of firms. So it is a move of growth, not giving up the black dream as such. And then on the issue of the self-esteem, I mean, when we destroy education, for me, it is sad, because then you're going to have this situation of ill-prepared students coming to universities, and the universities having to deal with that quality of student, and then, you know, the quality of education is just dropping. Then certainly when you get to the workplace, you are not able to compete because of this pass one, pass all kind of situation that is happening. And for me, when we destroy education, we are destroying the future generation. Now we have these children who have a low self-esteem because they can see now that they are not able to compete with their colleagues. And what is going to happen to those people? They're going to leave the firm destroyed. You know, again, we're going to see more depression and more depression. Yeah, that's why we have to save this country. When we have leaders, man, I was saying this today, you know, the cost of poor leadership is high. It's really high. Because we have a situation like this where the very fabric and foundation of a nation is being destroyed, because who are going to be these future leaders when the system is not producing them? And what are universities supposed to be doing? It's really just sad to me that we're now destroying universities out of corruption. You can imagine the future is gone.
Thank you very much. I think just before I answer the issue of the maths lead, in terms of the question of self-esteem, I think it has to start, you know, with us. If you identify a problem, perhaps because these students, isn't that before they go to the firms, they are students at universities. What I have seen is that some students who are coming from, you know, most of our students are coming from previously disadvantaged, or they are coming from disadvantaged, social backgrounds. But the accounting degree in its nature, it's so closed that it doesn't allow, you know, any extra, you know, activities that other students are involved in. Because universities has gone an extra mile right now, that there's a budget that is there, you know, for other activities beyond the classroom. But because, you know, they are in my faculty, the accounting, it's so structured in a way that your life is just that. Even the lecturers, you know, they are in a panic mode from day one. You know, I used to experience it when I was a deputy dean teaching and learning, that they will be so much in a panic mode, you know, when they are writing the postgraduate diploma, this, you know. So I'm not sure with the CA 2025 framework, if there is any room, you know, because it's now also saying they want to focus on issues of soft skills and all that. So that by the time the student comes out of university, they are a good, independent individual academically and socially. Because most of them, they pass, you know, with flying colors in terms of their academic, but then they don't belong. When they get to the workplace now, interpersonal skills, communication skills, you know, where you have to articulate yourself to boost their confidence. Maybe we can do it's in my faculty, so maybe we need to take responsibility to see how can we infuse also that they have got those, you know, they can even infuse it. You know, it's a pity that most of their curriculum and how they assess students is different, you know, from other degree programs where we can infuse, you know, some of this forcing communication and all those things. Maybe it's something that I've jotted down because it's in my faculty. And then the issue of maths literacy. It's a pity actually, because this year it was very sad especially here in Fort Hare, we used to take maths literacy, higher levels in our commerce degrees for the foundation. So you come in and go the extended curriculum. But now this year, the policy changed. We are no longer taking maths lit. And when I was sitting in January, when we were looking at admissions, for students there were students who had distinctions, like everything, but they didn't have pure mathematics. And we couldn't take them. Yes, I passed everything, but they couldn't, it's a commercial. So we were even discussing that perhaps we need to start visiting schools and talk to these schools to say, you are destroying the future of these students, because why would you make a student who is doing a commercial subject, a student who is doing science subject, to do maths literacy? When you have communicated that we are no longer taking it. If they are worried about my argument is that if they are worried that they will fail, rather let them do both and make it a leg, to say if they don't pass here, at least they have not to remove pure maths totally, And I'm not sure, because I'm not sure if it's actually allowed, if it's legal, what they are doing. I believe that they are doing it Nicodemously. They are doing it by the night. Because, in terms of the higher education, even the Basic Education Act, even the laws, they don't want discrimination. They want fairness. So I'm not sure that is it fair for a student who has been doing maths, pure maths, and then when you start to ask them, were you not aware that you need pure? They changed me. There are literally other schools who don't even offer maths pure maths. We have schools in the Eastern Cape who don't offer pure mathematics. Whereas the STEM subjects are the future. So it's something that has to be investigated. But at university level, I think there were some discussions to say we need to go, because schools are our stakeholders. We need to go and communicate with them to say, if you're a student, all students who aspire to do commercial subjects and science subjects, they need to at least do pure mathematics. Or perhaps, maybe also another thing is for us as universities. I know that the Department of Mathematics has been doing this. It's a new project that is happening, where we go and train, maybe retrain these teachers. Because the reason why maybe they are afraid to teach, they are not even competent. And they are not confident themselves as educators. So perhaps it's high time that we have to go there and try to boost their confidence. It starts with them, because someone was saying to us when we were complaining that students are not coming prepared. They said no, but the teachers are your students. They were your students. Also, it means there's something wrong with us also. So perhaps we have to go back and refocus and change the shift to say, like what Mama was saying, okay, let's not focus on that, let's look for a solution. Perhaps we need to go and train them, retrain them, so that they gain more skills and more confidence to be able to teach it to their learners. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Guys, unfortunately, we have run out of time. But I know there are a couple of you who still have questions. Mam Nonkululeko, if you are fine with that, do you think maybe while we are mingling and just socializing, that maybe you'll be open to answering some questions? And Doc, you as well, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And I think that has brought us to the end of the program. I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, to the University of Fort Hare for hosting us this evening, and to all the students who came out today to come and listen to this conversation and to be part of it. I think we all know how precious time is, and we really appreciate the fact that you took the time to be with us here this evening. And I just wanted to say thank you. Mam Nonkululeko is here. She is an icon. She is a figure of national importance. So please chat to her, speak to her, learn some of her lessons, and just hear some of the stories. And there will be an opportunity as well to have a copy of your book to get it signed as well. Thank you so much.
There are also eats available outside. Let's just network and then.